PokeClass is sponsored by CollectorsCash.com, your #1 online store for all you need for the Pokemon trading card game. They have all the top competitive and collector's cards on the market at prices you won't find lower anywhere else. Whether you're after tins and packs from the current format, or just looking for those hard to get primes to finish off your deck, Collector's Cash is your place to go. Make sure you check them out at www.collectorscash.com. Welcome everybody to a rather special episode of PokeClass. With Halloween coming up, I thought it'd be pretty cool to take a small break from competitive analysis and throw in some fun facts about the Pokemon TCG and just Pokemon in general. Lots of people replied to my video update just a few days ago with some really nice ideas about what to put into this episode, and I've narrowed them down to just a few to put into today's Halloween special. Let's get to it. So Pokemon is generally thought of as a child-orientated game with some cuddly characters going head-to-head in battles involving elements where Pokemon can merely just knock out the opponent, not seriously injure. But today we're going to slightly explore the darkness behind the cute faces we're all familiar with, and we'll end off with something which is actually quite dark indeed. So let's begin a rundown of some really strange and creepy facts behind the Pokemon we all know and love. First up, if something you probably would expect to show up when Scarius is involved, Gengar and its pre-evolutions. These Pokemon are pretty much the Pokemon to go to if you're looking for any creepy antics to do with the game. As Orange Soda Tic Tac said in the comments of my video update, here is the Pokedex entry for Haunter in the Soul Silver game. Its tongue is made of gas. If lit, its victims start shaking constantly until death eventually comes. So this is actually pretty disturbing if anything else. As I said earlier, this game is aimed towards the younger generation, hence the exclusion of Pokemon being killed each time they're hit with a flamethrower, but this entry takes it that little bit further by actually including the death element. However, not only does this entry focus on killing other Pokemon, but possibly humans as well. During the entirety of the Pokemon anime series, Pokemon and humans have always lived in perfect harmony, but this entry hints towards Haunters being able to lick humans and kill them in a pretty violent way. Whichever way you look at it, Haunter has been shown as a pretty violent Pokemon in this entry, which is pretty creepy if you ask me. Sticking with this particular line of Pokemon, there is actually another pretty interesting fact which was brought up by YouTube user Mr. Dragonite Trainer. This time, we're looking at the fully evolved form of Gengar and its pretty odd similarity with the Pokemon we all know as a fairly peaceful Clefable. If you look at both the images here, you may not see it at first, but it has been said that Gengar was designed to be Clefable's shadow. It may not be completely obvious now because the Pokemon are in different poses, but if you take away Clefable's spikes at the back and look at the body shape, they are both pretty much identical. This is also true for both of their hands, legs, and ears, which I find to be quite interesting. Gengar has always been made out to act as the shadows of other people in some of its Pokedex entries, which is made even more interesting by the fact that it's based on another Pokemon as their shadow, especially when the Pokemon it's based on is focused on being friendly and peace-loving. Onto a slightly darker note now, and as you all know, Pokemon can actually die. If you look back to some of the earlier Pokemon games, and the newer ones if I remember correctly, there is a place where a tower full of deceased Pokemon lay. The earliest showing of such a tower is in the first Pokemon games, Red and Blue, where the tower is simply called Pokemon Tower. This tower is full of gravestones and bereaved trainers willing to battle you on the way up. What I'm trying to get at is that your rival, Gary, or whatever you decided to call him, has actually experienced this, but you may not have realised it. In the games in question, Red and Blue, there is a part of the game where you enter Lavender Town and you encounter your rival, which is where the Pokemon Tower is. During this encounter, your rival goes a bit dark on you and asks you if you know what it's like to lose a Pokemon, and then nothing much else is said. During your battle with him around this point in the game, you may notice that a Raticate he had from before isn't actually there anymore, and it has said to be that Gary was in Lavender Town to lay his Raticate to rest that had passed away. Now I can't guarantee that this is actually true, but it could definitely make sense according to the storyline and how it occurs. Now that is showing the dark side of Pokemon if you ask me. Let's stay with the video games for our next fact, and we travel to the subject of bootlegged Pokemon cartridges, which are essentially hacked versions of old games, but one in particular bears quite a spooky theme. This GameBoy cartridge shows us a game called Pokemon Black, but not the one that we are all familiar with since it's on Game Boy Color and is blatantly a hacked version of one of the old games. However, this isn't just any old hacked game, it actually follows the same story as the original Pokemon Red, just with the extra addition of a new Pokemon. After selecting your starter Pokemon, another Pokemon is included in your party called Ghost, and it looks something like this, resembling what the ghosts of Lavender Town looked like before you got the Silph Scope. Anyway, this Pokemon only had one attack called Curse, and what it did when used was cause the screen to go black. The opponent's Pokemon cry would occur, and then the screen would go back to normal, with the other Pokemon completely gone. When looking at the opposing trainer's amount of Pokeballs left, you'll notice that it's been reduced by 1, simply meaning that you had just killed the opponent's trainer's Pokemon. What? What's more is that when the trainer is out of Pokemon, you then have to use Curse on the actual trainer, which turns them into a gravestone for the rest of the game. Your opponent couldn't even attempt to attack Ghost, because their Pokemon would simply state the Pokemon was too scared to move. This is actually pretty crazy. Not only are you given a Pokemon that automatically kills other Pokemon, but you also get to kill trainers too. What's up with that? Sure, this wasn't an official release, but I'm sure you agree that this is pretty deep for a Pokemon game hacker. And now we come to our final creepy Pokemon related fact for today's special, which is all to do with one of Japanese's favourite Pokemon, Hypno. This Pokemon actually seems quite cool when first looked at, because it can control the mind and whatnot, but when you see what Japan have turned it into, you may think twice each time you see this Pokemon from now. Japan have actually kind of turned Hypno into a sort of nightmare tale for children, which the Japanese apparently find quite funny. But elsewhere, it can actually be taken as quite a controversial matter. Here's a small poem dedicated to the yellow hypnotist. Come little children, come with me, safe and happy you will be. Away from your homes, now let us run, with Hypno you'll have so much fun. Oh little children, please don't cry, Hypno wouldn't hurt a fly. Be free, be free, be free to play, come down in my cave with me to stay. Oh little children, please don't squirm, those ropes I know will hold you firm. Oh little children, you mustn't leave, your families for you will grieve. Their minds will unravel at the seams, allowing me to haunt their dreams. But surely all of you must know that it is time for you to go. Oh little children, you weren't clever, now you shall stay with me forever. So most of you have probably cottoned on to why this piece of poetry is going to be quite controversial at best, but that is exactly the way Hypno is portrayed in the land of Japan. This small poem is entitled Hypnose Lullaby, which is quite a strange name because I don't know about you, but I wouldn't even think of singing this to anyone as a lullaby. It is designed to provoke the dreams of young children and warp them into nightmares the Hypno can then use to hypnotise the kids and take them away forever. This is pretty dark and extremely strange stuff here, and you wouldn't think that this had anything to do with the lovable creatures called Pokemon. However, Hypno is sort of a big deal in Japan. Just check out all of this merchandise you can get about the Pokemon itself, even featuring it leading kids away under a hypnotic spell on a t-shirt. I think you'll join me in saying that this is pretty creepy stuff, and it's probably one of the creepiest things out of what I've covered today, albeit not one of the strangest. So that's pretty much all I have for you in this Halloween special. I hope you've enjoyed all the facts I've highlighted, and I challenge you to ask yourself, is Pokemon really designed for kids, or is it just a cover-up for the real secrets behind Pokemon? I'll let you decide.